Well, internet privacy activist Barrett Brown came on RT America numerous times in the past to speak his mind. He also worked with hacktivist groups like Anonymous. He spoke out on issues from the trial of PFC Manning to cyber attacks. But now a federal court has approved of a media gag order on Brown and his attorneys pending his trial. The 32-year-old has been in federal custody for about a year now. He faces up to 100 years in prison for a number of charges for his alleged role within Anonymous. But are gag orders like this common? And is this an attempt to prevent the media from covering this case? Well, I was joined earlier by Peter Ludlow. He's a philosophy professor at the Northwestern University. And I began by asking him if there was some sort of a precedent for gag orders like this.
Well, I don't know if there's a precedent for gag orders like this. The people I've talked to said that this one is a little bit exceptional. I'm not an expert in that particular area.
And how do you know how is it exceptional? Is it just because it's Barrett Brown? Is it because it includes Barrett Brown and his lawyers?
Well, the problem is not that it's picking out Barrett Brown or the lawyers or whatever, but usually when there's a gag order, there's some tangible threat of poisoning the jury pool or something like that. And in this case, that's just preposterous. Or alternatively, there might be some threat to individuals somehow coming out of this. But again, that's preposterous in this case. I mean, normally when you think about a gag order, you think about a case where you know, like an OJ type case where it's going to be impossible to find a neutral jury. But here we're talking about a case where, for the most part, what, 0.1% of the population has ever heard of Barrett Brown, so it's just ridiculous in this case.
So, as you mentioned, very few people have actually heard of this case. Can you go ahead and walk us through some of the original arrest warrants and et cetera, and walk us up into this point?
Sure. Well, the whole thing started with Barrett Brown's Project PM, which was a website and a journalism project that he had running, where they would crowdsource the investigation of private intelligence companies and what they were up to and the kind of psyops that they ran against the American public. And then there was a hack that took place by a kid named Jeremy Hammond, and it was a hack of a private intel company called Strategic Forecasting, and it yielded something like 5 million emails. Jeremy put those 5 million emails up on Pirate Bay. Somebody in Anonymous broadcast the location of that data dump to whatever, tens of thousands of individuals. And Barrett took that link, copied that link, and then he pasted it into the chat channel for the 10 or 20 individuals that work on Project PM for him. And because he copied and pasted that link and pointed his editorial board to the data dump, he's been charged with a number of crimes involving various forms of credit card fraud, access device fraud, etc. And all of that because somewhere seated in those 5 million emails were some unencrypted credit card numbers and validation codes.
Sure.
That's the basic case, yeah. Now,
does this case have ramifications for journalists and academics, especially those who are covering this?
Yeah, absolutely. It has tremendous implications for journalists, because part of what journalists do is that when someone comes out with a story or claims that something is sitting in something online, a big database, you go and look at it. Or alternatively, you might want your colleagues to go and look at it. So you would copy and paste a link and say, here's a link to this database, go and look at it. And for journalists now, they have to think twice. And I know some of my colleagues who are journalists, some of my friends who do investigations into this sort of thing, they'll say, well, I actually am afraid to post this link. I'm afraid to give you the link because I don't want to get BB'd, or that is to say, I don't want to get Barrett Browned. And it's already created a tremendous chilling effect, which is presumably, you know, why it was done.
Now, as I mentioned, you're a philosophy professor, and I know that you do a lot to deal with the ethics of hacktivism. What do you think the ethics of hacktivism are?
Well, when I teach the ethics of hacktivism, the basic idea is to get students to think critically about different things that hacktivists might do and where they think people might be crossing the line. Is it when you do a denial of service attack, or is it when you go and do a kind of intrusion? Are both of those things unethical, as it were? Are there certain kinds of leaking things like what Bradley Manning did? Is that ethical? Is it unethical? And the basic idea is to get people thinking critically about hacking and leaking and so forth, because we live in a world where students have to confront these. They're going to have to confront these issues for the rest of their lives. It's about how do you behave and how do you act as a citizen in this new world where there are all these secrets and ways of getting at those secrets and so forth.
And that is something that we are all going to be exploring together in this brave new world of internet privacy and surveillance and whatnot. Thank you for coming on the show. That was Peter Ludlow. He is the philosophy professor at Northwestern University.
Thank you.